Hi everyone, Lloyd here with a demonstration of how to do a library search for some literature on the topic that you are interested in Edit 6900. And I will say this is a skill that you should not underrate. This is so important, and you may be saying, well, I'm not interested in becoming a professor or anything. Only professors do library searches or literature searches. Once I become a professional designer or whatever, this won't be necessary. Boy, are you wrong. You may recall that in instructional design, needs assessment is, of course, a very huge part of the instructional design process. And you may also recall that among the information or evidence or whatever you want to call it, that one ought to be consulting in order to inform one on what the needs are, is the literature, including research, other kinds of articles that you may find, government reports, and so on. And once again, this is one way to distinguish yourself when you're being competitive, that you know how to use more advanced literature search skills and techniques and tools rather than just going into Google and typing in some kind of a phrase. The other thing too, and I really can't stress this enough. This I know in this course we're giving you pretty much a cursory overview of what it means to do a literature search. But kind of have in your head the same idea of doing a systematic data collection like that informal project. You need to have a very systematic mindset here as well. You're not looking for literature that supports your point of view, your bias, or your agenda. You're looking at literature that is going to inform you as to what is going on or what has been done in the field on that particular topic. You should be looking to create a balanced review of literature, whether that supports what your thoughts are or if they do not. And if it turns out most of the research literature is against what you think is a good idea, well, you have to resolve and reconcile yourself to what that evidence is. And to me, that's a sign of a true professional. Okay, let's move on. And I really think of two ways to do a literature review. One, I'll just call it top down and bottom up. The top down is what I'm about to show you, and that is you don't know what's out there, so you're going to go to different databases where the literature is indexed, and you're going to be just kind of casting a wide net to see what's out there, trying to understand the literature. You are likely going to find that there are maybe thousands of articles when you first do a search, according to what search terms you put in. Obviously, you can't read that many, so you might then want to refine your search to be more selective. But again, this is where you're going back and forth. You're widening the net and you're going to be narrowing the net. Ultimately, you want to get down to a point where you're saying, well, I think I am now getting results that give me a good representation. And it's also then going to still be likely that you're not going to be able to read all of that for what your purposes are. So what you then need to do is be very purposeful in what articles you're going to select to actually read in depth, and then to include those in your overall review. So that means probably reading the titles of 1 or 200 articles, and maybe then reading the abstracts of many of those, then making selections on what will be this really good representative sample of literature that you will then be using in your literature review. All right, let's move on with this top-down approach. I've gone now to the UGA library screen here, the main page, which is just simply www.libs.uga.edu. And let me just say, you have access to some amazing resources here because you are a student at UGA. Many of these databases we're going to access are not free, and you would have to pay pretty big money. So if you get a job, maybe your company will pay for these, but for right now, take full advantage. Now, you might be tempted again to go right here to where it says find articles, books, and more, and just type in a search. Please resist that. I'm going to show you a technique that is going to give you a much better representation of the kinds of articles that you need to have. Now, there's so many articles out there, and there's research articles that are reporting primary data. There are reviews of literature out there. There are theoretical articles out there. There are opinion pieces out there. There's a wide swath of things. A literature review, a research literature review, needs to primarily focus on research reports. That is where the author are the researchers. The authors are the ones who collected the data. And the authors are the ones who are interpreting the data that they collected, as opposed to somebody else who's reading their article and then doing a summary of it. Kind of like what you're doing. You're going to be writing a review of literature, and that will be a secondary source. If somebody were to read your literature review, the onus would still be on the reader to go and check out to see if you actually have the right interpretation. But they probably won't, so you want to make sure you do a good job. Okay, here's what I recommend. First, go up here to search research by subject. So as you can see, I'm doing this, by the way, as a live demo, and this will, for the most part, parallel the slides that I showed in class. So research by subject. And there's a whole lot of subjects here. So, and some of these may be appropriate besides the ones I'm going to show you. So you have to just decide. But I think it's pretty obvious. I'm going to go to education. And you can see the subsets there. So you might, again, choose a subheading that is different than the one I'm going to choose. But it's pretty obvious that I'm going to choose instructional technology and design. And there's Nadine Cohen. She is a great librarian and a great resource, and do not hesitate to contact her if you need help with something. Okay, so now what we want to do is choose a database that is going to be the place that we're going to do our search. And I think many of these are going to be very good choices. PsycInfo, for example, would be a good choice for a lot of us. But really, I think the default choice that what I recommend to you, and this is where I go most of the time, is simply to ERIC. So I'll click on that. And now this is where not just anybody can go there. You put in your My ID. All right, and that gets us into that ERIC database. Now, once again, you might be tempted, okay, now I can type in my search. Well, I actually recommend that you go to the advanced search, which I'm going to do, and that's going to give you a few more options here that we can use. I also, you might recall this from the class slides, I recommend immediately you click on full text and peer reviewed as two limitations of the results, meaning you only want to have results that are going to be peer reviewed, they've been vetted, and that you're going to have access to the full text. Okay, so let me go here, and I'm going to type in something and try to demonstrate the issue here of trying to find a good, cast a good sized net. So, for example, let's say I'm interested in MOOCs. So you might say, well, I'll just type in MOOC, and I'll do a search. And notice too, it gave some recommendations for some other search terms. So it came up with 416, which maybe that's fine, maybe that's a good number. But watch what happens now. I just typed it in and then press search. What if I now choose to use MOOC as part of only of the title? So only search the titles of articles when you do your search. Well, I'm telling ERIC to do that. Notice that it came down to 271. So once again, that narrowed it down quite nicely, almost half. Other things I can do. Well, let's see here. MOOCs are pretty current, but you can see publication date, and you might recall my recommendation is to choose the last 3 years worth, so that you have really the most current research that you are going to be considering in your RDA and also in your project. And notice how that brought it down to 199. Now, I'm going to go one step further because I'm kind of interested in the massive open online courses in statistics to learn about statistics, and I'll choose search. That brings it down to 14. And interesting, if I go one more level, if I said just those where it's in the title, we see that there are no results that match those search criteria. Now, I actually chose this example of some search terms on purpose because I actually published a couple of articles on this particular topic. Why aren't they showing up? Well, let me turn off full text for a moment and do a search. And of course, we should expand the search now. We're going to get results including those articles where we do not have necessarily the access to the full paper. And indeed, we get 2 results by some guy named Lloyd. Now, what's kind of interesting is I happen to know that the Journal of Educational Multimedia and Hypermedia, there is not a license for that UGA. You can't get it online. But if I click on this one, the British Journal of Educational Technology, even though it said the full paper is not available, if I click on this Find It at UGA, it actually gives me some hope. And indeed, I'm going to click on this first one here, full text available at this EBSCO host. It opens up another window. I'm getting closer. It says full text, open a new window. And there it is, the entire article. So this was one example where the full text, it wasn't correct. But if you choose full text, I do recommend that you do that. You're kind of guaranteed that all of your results, you will be able to have access to the full article. All right, let me just come back to this first tab here. So a little bit of a bummer for me that it didn't come up in the way I'd like to recommend. I'm going to go back to the result list to see where I was, and I am going to turn back on full text. And this time, whatever, I'll just take out the fact that it could just be all text, that statistics would be mentioned. All right, so anyhow, you get the idea here of trying to expand and contract as we go. And by the way, too, I really recommend that you take some time. There's this wonderful little help button up here that the library gives you. And there's really a lot of ways to do searching, including, for example, I use wildcard and truncation symbols a lot when I do a search. So the 2 that I use most, in fact, probably the one I use the most is the asterisk. That will get you, like it shows right here, if you type in comput asterisk, it will then actually allow the search terms to get words like computer or computing, because it's really just those first 6 letters for sure, a literal match, then one or more letters that would come after it. Plus there's a whole lot of other good recommendations in here as well. Okay, so what's the next step? Well, I think it's pretty obvious that we need to now review these articles that these 14 that have come up in the search. Now, remember, the fact that it's peer reviewed doesn't mean that it's a research article. So you have to begin to take a look at, again, I think the titles themselves will give you a good clue. Anytime you see the effects of, it's a pretty good chance that is going to be a research article and that these authors actually collected data on something. But, you know, this one, Global Times Call for Global Measures, I'm not sure. This is just a review of the report. So I don't think that's going to be a research article. So there you go. So you have to go through and kind of take a look. Let's kind of go back up here and where is that one with the effects of? There it is. So it gives me a little bit of information. Let's go ahead and click on that particular link. Take a look, and now I have an abstract. This would be the next step. I would read through that to see if this article really does show some promise for what my needs are. And as I'm reading this, this is looking pretty promising. And I was using something called logistic regression models to, that's a statistical analysis that, yeah, can they be used to predict these teachers as they go through, and there's videos. Findings indicated that. So this looks pretty good. So here's what I suggest you do. Over here, add it to the folder. So there's now a nice online folder that has that particular article saved in it, at least the citation. Let me go back to the result list. And again, let's go through these and see which ones we want to then continue. So let's say motivation in a MOOC, a probabilistic analysis. So again, I'll go look at the abstract, but I'm just going to hit the folder symbol here. It's also here as well. And I'll do one more. I'll just, again, this looks good to me. I should read the abstract first, but I'll click on that to add that to my folder. So if I had 100 or more, I can go through here, and after an hour or so, I could probably have narrowed down my selection by reading the titles and the abstracts, maybe down to 20 or 30 that really look promising. Now I would have to go into all of those, and by the way, look, sometimes you see PDF full text right there. I'd have to then manually download the full text. But you might say, well, that's all I need to do, right? Because I only have to review one article for this RDA. But again, think of it in terms of doing the full-blown literature review. You want to have access to all of the articles, so one by one you'd go and get the full text. But you also want to save the citations so that when you write your paper, you have all of the information you need, which is, again, the author, the title, the publication, the year, the volume, maybe the issue, and then the page numbers. So all of that can be done in one step through this little folder feature. So I've been, again, adding articles to my folder. Let me go up to the folder option here. And you'll see that I have 3 articles in my folder, right? That's what I clicked on. Now you might have a lot more. And notice that I want to select them all, because I might do another review, maybe select only some of them, but I almost always select them all. And now I can do things over here. I can print those out. I can email that information to me. I can save it as a file, or I can export it. And for the purposes of this class, at least the assignments, probably print, email, or save file, and probably email would be the most convenient to get that information to you that you could then use when you write your papers. But I am going to show you the way I really recommend you eventually do it, and that is through the export feature. And you can see that the number of items to be saved is 3, and I have all these choices over here. And this export feature is really best for people who have invested in a bibliographic database tool. And the ones that are most common are Endnote and RefWorks. I think Zotero is also very common. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And Endnote, just so you know, as well as RefWorks, they are not free tools except for UGA students. You can actually go and download the applications. Some of these tools like RefWorks, and also there's a Endnote Web, have web-based interfaces. I'm kind of old school. I like having the application. Plus I've been using Endnote for about 25 years. So that's another reason. So I'm going to choose to do a direct export for Endnote in this RIS format. All right, so let me go ahead now and click Save. And it just downloaded a little file to my computer. And I know you can't see my download, which is a problem. Hang on a second. Okay, I just switched to full screen so you can see this. So it downloaded this file. If I go down to my downloads, you'll see it shows delivery-6.ris. Now, what I should be able to do is just open that file up, and it would ask, well, let me go ahead and do it, to choose an application that can make sense out of that. Normally that would work, but for some reason there's something wrong with my Mac. The configuration doesn't make it work. So let me cancel that. Instead, what I have to do is go down and open up Endnote first. And then what I do is I go down here and I drag that file over the Endnote application icon. So a little clunky there, but it's still worth it because as you can see, all three of these have now been entered. All the information that I was looking a moment ago has been entered into my Endnote database, and that is fantastic. By the way, the other really good reason to learn how to use something like Endnote or RefWorks or Zotero is you can use these as a partner with Word. When you are writing a paper, this tool Endnote will format my paper and my reference list according to whatever style I happen to want. APA though is what I, of course, write all my papers in. And if you're saying, well, geez, another tool to learn, I don't have time for it, I will tell you this is a great example of getting a return on your investment of time. If you're going to be writing any papers of any significance where you're going to be citing sources, that the small amount of time you'll actually take to learn the tool and how to do this will be, you'll be rewarded many fold over with how much time you'll save later on. All right, let me switch back to the library website. And so I've done that. That's quite nice. And I'm going to go back to my search page. And let's see here. Let me go back to the folder contents. Kind of backing up here. There we go. Excellent. And if I wanted to a brand new search, well, I would go up and choose new search. And that starts everything over again, where I would start by hitting advanced search. And as I say, I really recommend you turn on the options for peer review and full text. All right, so I'll just conclude by saying that the time that we spend here trying to learn this little bit more of a sophisticated approach is going to, maybe not guarantee, but it's going to be, you'll be on much more solid ground in saying that I have done a literature review and I believe it is representative of the literature that is out there, pro and con of what side you might be on, whatever your topic might be. Much more on solid ground than just going into Google Scholar or someplace like that and typing in some kind of a search term. So have some fun, enjoy this, and really do enjoy reading some literature.